last Friday we had John Stossel on, right? And we spoke about Ron DeSantis banning critical race theory. And he brought up a good point. He's a libertarian, that it is slightly, it could be taken as totalitarian. You know, you're banning this, you're saying it's not allowed from the top down, et cetera, et cetera. If you put the shoe on the other foot, it could be done with something else against you. You know, it's always a shoe on the other foot test. Is it up to DeSantis to make that call, or should he be pushing the parents to pay more attention to the school boards, to elect the right people, like what you're seeing in Loudoun County? I mean, is it up to DeSantis to make that call to ban it, or should he let it play out amongst the voters?
Two things. One, First Amendment rights, which Stossel was referring to, it doesn't apply to the government. Schools are part of the government, as I said. So, like, people decide, voters decide to elect legislators. Legislators make laws. Education is enshrined in the law, like what kids have to be taught in school. We do have standards in Florida, state standards that are prescribed by the law. As I was saying, African American history is one of them. We have a law on Holocaust education that you have to teach it as it's a fact, not to say that it's a theory or it's disputed or anything like that. That would be illegal. You would lose your job if you were a teacher and you said something like that. And so we have these laws for a reason because, again, public education, it's a public good. It's provided by the government. And so kids have the right to learn facts. And so to say that teachers should have free speech to say whatever they want in class while they're government employees, it's like saying that I, as a government employee, should be getting paid to campaign against Nikki Fried or something, which is not allowed. You know, like there are restrictions that you have as a government employee. You can speak freely in your free time, but you can't while you're on the clock, and especially while you're teaching kids, you can't say whatever you want. I mean, there was a teacher here in Palm Beach, I believe, who said that the Holocaust is a theory and some people disagree that it actually happened. He was fired over it. Not because he doesn't have free speech rights, but because he said it in class to his students when he's a government employee. And you can't do that. You're not entitled to express your own opinion in class if it's not factual, and if there is a law about this, about what needs to be taught. So that's one thing. The second thing is discrimination is already against the law. If you're facing discrimination at work, for example, from your employer, if you're facing discrimination in university, if you're a student and you face racial discrimination or based on gender or anything like that, you have the right to sue, right? And that's been the law for a long time. The types of things that are being taught under the umbrella of critical race theory is discriminatory. For example, everyone has probably heard this kind of hysterical example from Coca-Cola. They did a diversity training where they said basically whiteness is bad, try to be less white as if you can change your race. And then they said whiteness, like meritocracy and competition, it's forms of whiteness. Now, I don't believe that. I believe meritocracy means excellence, and anyone from any race can have that quality. It's not tied to whiteness. It's not one specific race that can only be excellent. So this type of thing, it is discrimination. And that's been against the law for a long time. So I don't agree with Stossel's points at all for those two reasons. And I think libertarians, I agree with them on certain things, but I think they don't know what time it is. Now with the left taking over so many institutions from business to schools, conservatives should use their lawful power in order to ensure that the facts are taught.
Yeah, so you know what my biggest challenge was, what Stossel said about that, is you can't, he says, well, let the market decide. I said, you can't move your kids' zip codes. You're controlled when it's statewide that's being taught. Let the market decide on private school. That, go for it. Open up a private school and teach critical race theory 24/7. Matter of fact, I'd love a case study. I would love for the Democrats to fund opening up schools that they teach heavy race theory in their private school, and let's see how many students pay, how many parents pay 30 grand a year for their kids to go to that school. I think it's a great system. If you think you're so right and there's a market for it, start a school with the core foundation being CRT. See if there's people that are willing to pay money for it. I think that's a good idea.
Public school is not a marketplace of ideas, and there are some parts of this state where there's no private schools. So
that was my challenge with what Stossel said, is you can't say let the markets decide. You can't do that when I'm a taxpayer and you create a law. I can't compete in a market decide. Like, it's a whole, remember parents used to get caught because they wanted their kid to go to the better public school and they gave the mom's address and then they got caught.
It happens all the time.
Happens all the time. I'm like, dude, you can't do that kind of stuff. So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.